Forget the rusty shackles and the dark dungeons. I'm going to show you a form of justice so surgically precise and psychologically terrifying that professional criminals voluntarily surrendered their hands to be destroyed. We're not talking about random torture. We're talking about a medieval innovation designed to solve a single, terrifying problem: master pickpockets. Back in 1387, authorities in London weren't just punishing a thief named William the Quick. They were making a calculated statement. William wasn't executed. Instead, he was strapped to a device in the town square, and as the crowd watched, an executioner slowly turned a handle. The horrific screams that followed were a result of his fingers being systematically crushed, one by one. But that's only the beginning. Historians intentionally obscured the truth. This wasn't sadism. It was an economic strategy. Medieval societies perfected 3 specific methods of judicial amputation, designed exclusively for the hands of thieves. By the end of this video, you'll uncover why certain career criminals actually chose hand destruction rather than facing a more terrifying alternative. I'll unveil the shocking device that instantly identifies a professional criminal by their palms, explain why master pickpockets welcomed these hand-crushing punishments, and pinpoint the modern country still performing judicial amputation in 2024. Make sure to subscribe to this channel and let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. We dive into the hidden, darker corners of history, and trust me, this story gets far more sinister than you can imagine. Picture the sheer chaos of a 14th century European market. You feel a slight pressure against your belt, and in a blink, your coin purse, a week's wages, is gone. The thief has vanished into the throng. This was more than just petty theft. This was a professional enterprise. Master thieves operated within organized guilds, complete with apprentices, specialized roles, and established territories. Their fortune relied entirely on one thing: their hands, precision instruments honed for stealing. Authorities faced a grim reality. Standard penalties failed. A whipping, the pickpocket would return to work, hands fully functional, within days. Imprisonment? Too expensive, and it only created criminal networking schools. Executing every thief, society would run out of workers, and the bodies would pile too high. So, they conceived of something far more chilling: punishments calibrated to the crime. If your hands were your weapons, then your hands would become your prison. But the true genius of medieval justice was never just punishment. It was about manufacturing permanent, living advertisements. Every mangled hand reaching for a loaf of bread in the marketplace was a silent, devastating warning. This is the cost of stealing. The 3 methods I'm about to detail weren't mere torture. They were a fusion of psychological warfare, economic disincentive, and social engineering, implemented with unthinkable precision. The true horror isn't the brutality itself, but the meticulous, almost architectural planning behind these systems, tested and perfected like the construction of a cathedral. It only gets darker from here. The first method appears deceptively simple: a wooden stock, common at any Renaissance fair. But scrutinize a 14th century London court record, and you'll find this chilling entry: item, 1 pillory for the hands with iron spikes positioned to pierce the palms when weight is applied, to be used for pickpockets of the first offense. This was not the typical pillory. While standard stocks were meant for public humiliation, these specialized versions were instruments of precise damage. Hidden iron spikes were surgically embedded directly beneath where the victim's palms would rest when locked in place. The mechanism was ingenious. You could stand relatively comfortably at first, but exhaustion was inevitable. As your legs tired and you slumped, your entire body weight would drive your palms onto those spikes, piercing straight through your hands. The ultimate cruelty was the choice: remain standing for 12 hours straight to preserve your hands, or succumb to fatigue and permanently destroy your tools of trade. Either outcome guaranteed you'd never pickpocket with that same dexterity again. But the mental anguish was worse. The crowd didn't just watch. They participated. Citizens would hurl objects, and some would intentionally jolt the pillory, forcing the victim to lose balance and impale themselves. William the Quick, the pickpocket from the start, lasted 8 hours. Court records chillingly note the sound his palms made upon hitting the spikes, like a butcher's cleaver striking bone. The resulting scars were a distinct, permanent sign, symmetrical puncture wounds on the palms. This served as a visible database of known criminal centuries before modern fingerprinting. However, the spiked pillory was only the entry-level deterrent. 14th century authorities soon found that some thieves simply adapted, learning to steal with damaged hands or switching to new crimes. Don't stop watching yet, because what they reserved for repeat offenders makes the pillory look like a mere slap on the wrist. The next punishment didn't just injure. It branded the criminal's very soul, creating a walking, breathing warning for the rest of their lives. And the branding process was far more gruesome than you're imagining. The initial smell, that distinct mix of heated metal and burning human flesh, was always followed by the screams. In colonial America, repeat offenders faced a fate that eclipsed the pillory's pain: the thief's brand. It wasn't just any brand. It was a calibrated system where one could read a criminal's entire history just by examining their palms. These Massachusetts court documents specify the procedure. The letter T for thief to be burned into the flesh of the right palm, with iron heated to cherry red for a second offense. Letter R for rogue in the left palm for the third offense. But the secret was its purpose. This was economic warfare. Imagine trying to buy food when everyone sees the searing T in your palm. Imagine shaking hands for a business deal or simply holding your own children, with permanent evidence of your crimes scorched into your flesh. The branding was a public spectacle designed for maximum psychological trauma. The iron was glowing hot, cherry red, to instantly cauterize the wound and prevent infection, ensuring the victim would survive to carry the mark forever. A 1698 court document details the cold technique. The criminal's hand shall be secured to a wooden block, the brand applied for exactly 3 seconds, pressed with sufficient force to penetrate the full thickness of the palm skin, ensuring permanent scarification that cannot be concealed or removed. 3 seconds. That's all it took to utterly destroy a person's social functionality. The truly diabolical element was the variation. A T in Massachusetts, an R in Virginia, a B for burglar in Pennsylvania. This created an inter-colony criminal identification system centuries before modern law enforcement databases. The psychological toll was immense. Branded thieves devised desperate methods to hide their marks, wearing gloves in the heat, keeping hands in pockets, or turning their backs during a handshake. Some even attempted self-mutilation, cutting deeper wounds to obscure the brand. Yet, incredibly, some branded thieves still found ways to steal, prompting authorities to consider the ultimate, most brutal solution. If the pillory failed and branding failed, then perhaps the destruction of the hands was the only way to solve the problem finally. What follows is not merely torture. It is surgical amputation masked as justice. The device I'm about to reveal was so effective that even historians hesitate to document it. In 1532, a German executioner named Franz Schmidt wrote in his diary about a mechanism he chillingly named the hand engine, a spring-loaded contraption specifically designed to systematically break every bone in a human hand while keeping the victim conscious throughout the entire process. Schmidt's notes are disturbingly clinical. The machine Franz Schmidt described in his 1532 diary was the final solution, the hand engine. It consisted of 2 massive iron plates connected by 4 adjustable screws, a contraption of pure mechanical dread. When perfectly calibrated, this device didn't just smash a hand. It crushed each finger bone in a deliberate sequence, beginning with the smallest joints and relentlessly proceeding to the wrist. The total duration of this calculated destruction? Approximately 47 minutes. This wasn't chaos. It was precision engineering designed to maximize both agonizing pain and permanent disability. The engine featured measurement markings to guarantee uniform pressure and a ratcheting mechanism to absolutely prevent the victim from pulling their hand free once the process began. But here is the truly chilling detail. Schmidt's own diary reveals he spent months testing and refining the device on cadavers, ensuring the pressure settings were perfect. He calculated precisely the force required to break every bone without causing immediate death from shock. The psychological warfare was just as brutal. Victims were forced to watch, fully conscious, as their own hands, their livelihood, were systematically destroyed bone by bone. The engine was positioned so they could witness every splintering crack, every moment of methodical elimination. Nuremberg court records documented the public spectacle, noting that when the convicted thief Wilhelm Bauer endured the hand engine before a crowd of 400 citizens, his screams could be heard 3 streets away, a successful, visceral warning to all. The aftermath was often worse than the crushing itself. Survivors were left with hands that resembled twisted claws, bones fused at wrong angles, fingers permanently incapable of a precise grip. They became living deterrents, begging in the marketplaces, their mangled appendages constantly visible. Though some died from infection or shock, most survived, forced to live with the knowledge of a decision they themselves had made. Wait, what? Chosen it? This is where the story takes its most shocking and buried turn. Professional thieves didn't just endure this punishment. Many of them volunteered for it. They lined up, begged for it, choosing deliberate hand destruction over the alternative, because what they faced instead of the hand crusher was so incomparably worse that living without hands felt like mercy. The alternative to judicial hand destruction was death by public execution, typically hanging, often preceded by additional hours of tortures that made bone crushing seem tame. This forced the professional criminal to make a terrifying calculation. Choose definite hand mutilation and survive as a disabled beggar, or face the gallows with only a coin flip's chance of surviving the drop, the other 50% being a slow, agonizing death by strangulation. 15th century German court records reveal the brutal mathematics. Hangings had a shocking 47% survival rate due to rope failures, executioner incompetence, or last-minute interventions. But surviving meant facing even worse punishments later, while death meant, well, death. The master thief Heinrich Goldfinger Zimmermann's 1489 confession, preserved in Munich's archives, explains the twisted logic. I choose the hand engine over the rope because I have seen men dance on air for 20 minutes before dying. I have seen the rope break and leave men half-strangled, only to be hanged again. Better to live without hands than die with them. This created an underground economy that historians tried to erase. Professional thieves began forming networks of voluntary mutilates, disabled former criminals who became invaluable informants, guards, and intelligence gatherers for the very authorities who had destroyed their hands. Think about the psychology. If you could no longer steal, but you understood exactly how thieves operated, you became an asset to law enforcement. These hand-crushed former criminals were medieval Europe's first organized crime informants. Schmidt's diary reveals the scale. In this year alone, I have processed 23 thieves through the hand engine. Of these, 19 survived and now serve as informants for the City Watch. They identify new thieves, reveal criminal networks, and demonstrate to the public what befalls those who steal. The system was so effective that it ultimately destroyed itself. By 1550, so many professional thieves had chosen mutilation over execution that organized crime networks simply collapsed. There weren't enough functional, dexterous hands left to maintain the sophisticated theft operations that had plagued medieval cities. The ultimate irony? This surgical destruction of criminal hands led to the rise of different crimes: fraud, blackmail, and confidence schemes that didn't require manual dexterity. The authorities solved the pickpocket problem by creating an entirely new category of criminal. The hand-crushing devices disappeared by 1600, not due to greater humanity, but because they had worked too well, eliminating the very criminal class they were designed to punish and forcing crime to evolve beyond the reach of physical mutilation. Medieval justice achieved its goal through the most brutal means imaginable, and in doing so, accidentally proved that the human mind could be far more dangerous than the human hand. I know this has been dark, but if you're still watching, you're clearly as fascinated by history's most brutal truths as I am. This system of hand-specific punishments shaped criminal culture for over 300 years, creating a brutal equilibrium between crime and punishment that modern justice systems still struggle to understand. But here's what should terrify you: we never truly stopped. In 2024, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and several other nations still practice judicial hand amputation for theft. Just last month, a 23-year-old man in Riyadh had his right hand surgically removed for stealing a mobile phone worth only $200. The methods are now clinical, more sterile, using anesthesia and surgical techniques, but the psychological principle remains identical. Destroy the tool, destroy the crime. Medieval Europe's brutal experiment proved that targeting specific body parts based on specific crimes could effectively reshape criminal behavior. The question isn't whether these punishments worked. Historical evidence proves they did. The question is whether a civilization should ever define justice as the systematic destruction of human bodies, even when those bodies belong to criminals. So here's what I want you to think about. If you were facing a choice between life in a modern maximum security prison or losing your hands for a crime, which would you choose? And more importantly, what does your answer reveal about the nature of justice itself? Make sure to subscribe to this channel for more hidden history, and let us know in the comments which city you're watching from and what your choice would be.